Hey, welcome back to the podcast. It's your host, Brad here. Listen, this episode may be a little short just because I'm fighting through this chess code, all this crud that's going around. And yeah, I'm going to do my best. So if you're watching this on video, you may notice the background's totally different. That's because I just moved offices. I'm moving into my new office to be able to offer even more services and bring on some staff and really just create an awesome community and source for contractors to do some phenomenal things in their business in the next decade. I mean, there's just so much great going on right now in the world with opportunities, and it may not seem like it, but there is. You just got to trust me on that. I got clients that are absolutely killing it. Even though it may seem like it's down and everyone's uncertain, there's still plenty of opportunity if you know how to tap into that. And I'm excited about it. I hope you are too. So let's dive into this episode. Today, I want to talk about the emotional cycle of change. And this is when I first saw this, so many things clicked in my head. Like it was just like an instant aha moment of holy crap. This is what I've been struggling with for so long. And if you are, if you're not familiar with this, you can just go online and just search for the emotional cycle of change. You'll get a little graphic. It looks like a V, a line plotted on a graph. Looks like a V, and there's 5 stages to this, which I'm going to go through. But just so you know, you're looking at the right thing. On the left side of the graph, it's emotional stage. On the bottom of the graph, it's your timeline. And the first stage is stage 1 is uninformed optimism. I'm just going to read through these and then I'll come back to them. But stage 1 is uninformed optimism. Stage 2 is informed pessimism. Stage 3 is the valley of despair. And this is a really important one. Stage 4 is informed optimism. And then stage 5 is success and fulfillment. And so what this graph is, lots of data, lots of people smarter than me put this stuff together, have done a ton of research. And this is pretty well known to be understood and accepted as the legitimate emotional cycle of change. Now, this can apply across many different spectrums of your life and business, right? So it can be the emotional cycle of change in your business. It can be the emotional cycle of change in your relationships, emotional cycle of change in learning a new hobby. Like it doesn't matter. You have to go through these. The only difference is if you're seasoned, these timeline may be shorter and the valleys and dips may not be as great, but you still have to go through every one of these stages before you have some success in your life. So let's talk about number 1, uninformed optimism. What does this mean? Well, whenever we decided to start our own business, and I remember I was working for, it's my wife's cousin at the time, but we weren't married yet. I didn't even know her. That's how I found my wife, was through my old boss. But he had started his own business, and I was a construction manager for a developer, and Scott was his name. He was the carpenter that we were using to do all of our finished carpentry. And after a couple of years of him doing work for us, I got to know him a little bit better. And he's about my age, might be just a slightly young, a couple of years younger than me. But we kind of hit it off, became friends. And then whenever my boss was going through some financial times, I saw the writing on the wall, it's time to leave. And so I signed up with Scott, and he brought me on as a carpenter, really trained me up in a lot of the finished carpentry techniques. And so I worked for him for a couple of years. And him being younger and newer and let's just say not as motivated to be uber successful, he didn't really care if there was a lot of work. So, a 20-hour work week, no big deal. 2 days on, 3 days off, no big deal. Just whatever the work comes in. And, I was recently divorced, and I had my 2 daughters, and I was trying to provide a family for them, and it just wasn't working out. And I remember thinking, well, if Scott can have a business where he's only working 20, 30 hours a week, and he's not that motivated, I know I can do it myself, and I could probably do better because I'm way more motivated. I'm a way harder worker. I got my kids I got to try and raise and blah, blah, blah. So this is the uninformed optimism. Like, I'm very optimistic that I can do this, that I can start this business, but I'm completely uninformed about everything that's required to actually own a business. So we jump in, feet first into the deep end, or head first, whatever, and we're going to sink or swim, right? So it's the uninformed optimism. We start our business, and day one, everything's exciting. We tell all our friends and family, and we get a bunch of work right away from our fans and friends and family because they feel sorry for us. Those are the mercy. I call those the mercy jobs. It's like, yeah, I think I need my handrail replaced. Yeah, why don't you come out here and do this? You're like, oh yeah, absolutely. You all know what I'm talking about, right? But the thing is that once you burn through your network of your friends and family, then all of a sudden there's just not quite as much work out there, right? Then it's coming wintertime and things slow down and you start to get a little nervous. You start to see some writing on the wall. You start to become a little more informed, right? And this is where you cross that line, the optimism/pessimism line. If you're following along with me online, you can see there's a dotted line there. You have the optimism on top, pessimism on bottom. You cross over from optimistic to pessimistic, and you become an informed pessimist. You become informed like, holy crap, this is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. Everybody makes it look so easy on the internet and all these, Facebook gurus and Instagram millionaires with their jets and cars that they rent. It's all a bunch of bullcrap, smoke and mirrors, right? And so you start to be like, okay, this is hard. I'm not sure if I can do this. I'm going to keep pushing forward and see what happens. And then you get to stage 3, which is where most businesses die, and that is the valley of despair. This is the point where you've done everything that capable of doing, or are capable of doing, and you're not getting results. People aren't calling you. You can't find good work. Good helpers, good laborers. You can't find, your clients are telling you you're too expensive, even though like what you're charging is barely enough to keep the lights on. Like, this is the valley of despair. This is the point where we're like, how are guys staying in business? Like, how is this possible? This right here is the most critical point of the entire thing, because this is where most people quit, or this is where shiny object syndrome kicks in. Because I guarantee you, when you're in uninformed optimism, nobody can knock you off, right? You just start your business, and 2 months into your business, somebody comes along and is like, hey, I need a new lead guy. I'll pay you $150,000, give you a truck. It'd be great. And you're like, no way, man. I'm starting my own business and I'm going to be a millionaire, right? There's no shiny object there. Like, you can't be distracted because you're so optimistic. But as you get into the valley of despair, you're like, okay, this is not working out. It's a lot harder than I thought. Somebody comes along and says, hey, you want to, I'll give you this business. I'll give you this job at $150K a year in a company truck. And you're like, you know what? Starting to sound pretty good. I have only been making $40,000 a year. This is my second year in. I don't see it ever getting any better. I think it's time to move on. Who wants to pass up a job like that? Right? That's the valley of despair, shiny object syndrome. Hey, I'm doing roofs, and there's a lot of roofing competitors, and it's just really, really hard. So you know what? I'm going to start doing fencing as well. Shiny object. So here's what happens. You're in the valley of despair. It's really hard. You can't see anything out because you're in the valley. You can't see over the edge. You don't know how far you got to go to get to the next level, to get out of the valley. And along comes Mr. Shiny Object. It's a new service offering. It's a new job offering. It's a new this, right? And so what we do is we say, oh, this looks great. And we sign on because 3 people asked us if we could do a fence for them, and we turned it down because we only did roofs. But I don't have enough roof jobs and I need to do some work. So fencing sounds great. Let's get into fencing. And what you do is you return from the stage 3, the valley of despair, and you return back to stage 1, which is Uninformed Optimism. It's new, it's exciting, it's shiny. It promises all kinds of fortune and excitement and good, good being, well-being, and everything else is just going to be awesome because now we're going to start doing fences. And then you are in your uninformed optimism. And then shortly you get back to informed pessimism, which is there's actually twice as many fencing contractors as there is roofing contractors, and you're in the exact same boat. And now you're in the valley of despair once again. And here comes Mr. Shiny Object Syndrome. Hey, you know what would really be cool? It'd be cool if you started doing decks, because I've had 4 people in the last month ask if we do decks. I think decks where the money's at. And once again, you go from stage 3, valley of despair, back to stage 1, uninformed optimism. Decks are going to be great. And you start doing it. 6 months, a year later, you're back to valley of despair. Right? Because what you're trying to do here, guys, is you're trying to shortcut this process. You have to go through the valley of despair. You have to. That is the only way. And so whenever I talk to contractors and they're like, hey, we do 15 different services because it makes us, that way we stay busy. That is all results of valley of despair, cycle back to uninformed optimism, and going through this process, right? It just is. You can't. You have to push through the valley of despair. Now, here is what's the most critical thing you need to understand. This is probably the most important information I've ever given somebody. If you take this advice, it will change your entire business. It will change and push you through the valley of despair. Okay? What you have to do to get through the valley of despair is you have to learn new information. Think about this for a second. You're in the valley of despair because you've maxed out the information that you have. You've tried everything that you currently know what to do, and it hasn't worked. This is the exact reason why consultants and coaches and courses and books and YouTube videos, why all of these things exist. Because you have to get new information. You have to acquire the information that you're missing in order to get out of the valley. Hey, just a quick timeout from the show. In the next 30 seconds, I'm going to tell you exactly how you can transform your contracting business. Imagine being part of a community of winners where you can find out exactly what they've done to be successful. That's exactly what you get when you join the Profit Club. But it's not just a community. You get lifetime access to all of my course-related material, including all future material that I add. But wait, there's more. Each week, you'll get access to 3 group coaching calls to talk about sales, marketing, and business problems and answer any questions that you may have. Still not convinced? How about personalized one-on-one coaching to help you overcome your limits? And here's my promise to you. I guarantee you will double your investment within 90 days, or I personally will work with you one-on-one until you do. So don't wait. Elevate your game with the Profit Club today. Now let's get back to the show. If you are stuck in a hole and you don't know how to get out of the hole, and I come along and I say, hey, why don't you just use a shovel and dig out around there and dig out a ramp, and then you can walk yourself out. You might be like, hey, that's a good idea. I never thought of that before. Yeah, because you were stuck in the valley. You were stuck in the hole. You didn't know that. Why don't you make your own ladder? Why don't you get that stick behind you and break it up and stick it? I mean, there's all kinds of ways. But when you're in the valley, all you can think of is, I'm in this valley. I don't know how to get out. It sucks. I don't want to do this anymore. You have to acquire a new set of information, a new set of skills, a new set of education in order to get past that. That is the only way. So I don't care if you join my free Facebook group. I don't care if you follow me on TikTok. I don't care if you listen to my podcast. I don't care if you talk to other contractor coaches, if you talk to a business coach, if you buy courses, if you read books. I don't care what method you use to get new information, but you have to get new information. And I've said it before. One of my favorite quotes is Thomas Edison. He said, and I'll butcher it, but he's like, we can't use the same thinking to solve the problem that we use to create it, right? So in other words, we're in the valley of despair because our current thinking, our current framework of information, our current database is not updated. I like the idea of updating your firmware, right? You need to update your firmware. You are running on a 5-year-old firmware because you're too lazy to update your firmware. How many people have gotten notifications on their printer or their computer or TV? It says you need to update your firmware, and we just cancel it out. I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to deal with that. That's a pain in the butt. I don't want to deal with that. We do it 100 times. Keep, delete, 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 ignore, ignore, ignore. You got to update your firmware, ignore. We do that 100 times, and finally we're like, why isn't this thing printing? Why won't my printer print anymore? Why won't my computer play videos anymore? Why won't my TV work anymore? It's like, dude, because you're running on a firmware that's 10 years old. Everything's surpassed you. You got to update that firmware in order to get new information. So once you get this firmware update and you move past the valley of despair, you get into informed optimism. That's stage 4. Informed optimism is a very, very good place to be. That's where now you're operating because you can see the future. You still may have ways to go, but you can now see the path forward. You can now understand, how to make a good profit. You can now understand how to attract top talent. You can now understand how to market your business and find good clients. These things become apparent to you, and you can see the future now, right? And now it's just taking action on the information that you have, the new firmware that you've updated. You still may have a long ways to go. It still may take you years to get there, but now you can actually see the path forward because you've gotten out of the valley of despair. But you'll never get past that line. You'll never get out of the valley, and you'll never cross over back into that optimism line unless you update your firmware. You have to get new information. You also have to surround yourself with a community of people who are going to show you that way on a constant basis. Because I tell you this right now, every morning when I wake up and I go throughout my day, I'm constantly bombarded with negative thinking, with scarcity mindset, with news things. It's all gloom and doom. I have to purposely ignore this stuff. I have to remove myself as much as possible. I get so freaking mad at Google on my phone because when I open up Chrome, it shows you a list of news articles, and almost every time it'll get me. There's like 3 or 4 headlines about something going on. The next thing I know, 15 minutes later, I've read 3 or 4 articles, and I'm like, gosh dang it. I was trying to get online to search for something, right? So it is advertisers understand attention, and they understand how to grab your attention, and you have to be diligent to make sure you're not being susceptible to this stuff. And so when you can surround yourself with a community of other people, when you're feeling bad and you go onto a group and you post and like, hey guys, I just had this conversation with a client and they said this and this and this, I guess they weren't my customer. And then 3 or 4 people can say, you know what, Brad, actually, the way you worded that kind of came across wrong. Maybe you should try this. Maybe you should do this, right? I think you might have missed the ball on this. And you got people holding you accountable as well as lifting you up and making sure that you're doing, what you're supposed to be doing. It makes all the difference. There's a reason why they say, it's lonely at the top. If you own a business, if you're an executive, it's lonely at the top. And that is true. And so you have to surround yourself with other people who are experiencing the exact same thing that you're experiencing and can, come along beside you, put their arm around you and say, hey, it might be tough right now, but keep pushing through. You can do it. That's what we do in the Profit Club, by the way. This is why I'm so passionate about the Profit Club. And, I get that some contractors, they want to figure it out on their own, and that's okay. You're just going to spend longer time in the valley of despair. Some people can get through that. Some people can work their way through it if they're smart enough, if they have enough patience, and they're going out and they're actively looking for information, they can get through the valley of despair. But I promise you, it's a heck of a lot easier whenever you join a group who can just show you the exact way to get out of that. I've spent lots and lots of money on coaching, and I'm at the point now when I need something, when I'm in the valley of despair, instantly look for somebody I can hire to show me how to get out. I don't even want to learn on my own because I know the time it's going to expand my time frame. The whole reason why you hire a coach is not to teach you necessarily information that you already know or can find on your own. It's to condense all of this and teach you the exact thing that you need right now to get the needle to move the quickest and the most. It's to say, don't do X and Y, but do Z. You don't need to do these three things just yet. If you just focus on this one thing, it's going to get you the biggest results in the shortest time, and then you can go back and do the other things. Because what a lot of people have is like a puzzle piece, right? The business is like a puzzle. My wife and I and son are putting together a puzzle right now. It's like a puzzle piece, a puzzle where you have, let's say, 1,000 pieces of this puzzle, and you may have 800 pieces put together. You figured it out through your uninformed optimism and your informed pessimism. You figure it out. You've managed to figure out how to get there, but you're still missing 50 pieces and you can't find them. You just can't find where they're at. You hire an expert who can say, here are the 50 pieces that you need. You've already done a good job of getting to where you're at now, but here's the 50 pieces that you need, right? That is how you get through the valley of despair. And then once you get into informed optimism, like I said, you can see the future. And then stage 5 is success and fulfillment. When you get to stage 5, this is where you're building legacy. This is where you're really enjoying every second of what you're doing. You're building lives. You're affecting your employees. You're touching your customers. This is the part that we all want to get to, the success and fulfillment side of it. But you have to go through the valley of despair. There is no way to shortcut that. There's no way to, I'm sorry, not shortcut it. There's no way to eliminate it. You have to go through it. You can shortcut it by learning or downloading that firmware, right? Update your firmware as often and as quickly as possible. I promise if you do that, if you become a student of learning, you will get there much quicker. I'm always reading books. When I'm driving, I'm listening. Drive time is learning time. I love going on 2-3 hour trips, 4 hour trips, because that way it allows me to read a book. I can read one, maybe two books, on a 3 or 4 hour trip, because that's how I can learn. I don't have to go and experience all this stuff myself. I'm a very talented person, very skilled and talented person. I can do a lot of things. I can pretty much build an entire house from start to finish on my own with the skill set that I have. It's completely worthless to build a business, right? This isn't about how skilled you are and how much you can learn. Take that and throw it out. That's the old firmware. The old firmware is you have to be able to know how to do everything yourself. That's old, dilapidated firmware. Update the firmware. The new firmware is do the highest value task in your business and hire or sub out the rest. That's the new firmware, right? With technology and ability to hire people for pennies on the dollar in other countries and using freelancers and VAs and all this stuff, you don't have to do it all yourself. There's no reason. So I hope this was enlightening to understand how the emotional cycle of change. And by the way, this is change, meaning you have to change. You literally have to become a different person. You have to change. And one of the biggest things that I'll tell you that I noticed that hold contractors stuck is they don't want to change. They would rather be miserable, hate their life, work 16 hours a day, and just complain on Facebook groups about how terrible it is than literally look in the mirror and say, you're the problem. All we have to do is change this, and our lives will change overnight. You would rather live in misery than have to change. That's human nature. Once you understand that change is imminent and change is a requirement and change will always happen with or without you, Once you understand that you have to change, your life will change instantly. I'm always changing. I'm always evolving. I'm always learning. This is why you see people that are like, people that argue with me all the time on social. I've been in business for 20 years and I've never had a website and all my work's from referrals. And then those are the people that are reaching out to me later on and saying, hey, the phone's not ringing anymore. Yeah, because you're using old firmware and you're unwilling to change this idea that you do need to have a website. You do need to do marketing. You do need to have reviews, because as generations change, buying processes change. The way people buy changes. So it requires firmware. It requires an update to your firmware. So the emotional cycle of change, the 5 stages: uninformed optimism, stage 2, informed pessimism, stage 3, valley of despair, stage 4, informed optimism, stage 5, success and fulfillment. Guys, if you want help with anything in your business, let me know. I have lots of resources. I'm more than happy to jump on a phone call with you. We can do a price audit if you want. If you want to look and see if your pricing is correct, I'm more than happy to do an audit for you. Look at your business and tell you what you should be charging. For some people, that's all you need. For others, it may be more. But more than happy, just schedule that with me. There's links in the show notes. You can always schedule a call with me. I'm very open to my contractors, to the industry. I'm not this closed person on a pedestal that you can't get a hold of me. All my clients have, basically 24-hour access to me. They can message me if something's going on, because I'm dedicated to helping contractors. I'm not just some guru on TikTok who's trying to sell you some bull crap. I've been there. I've lived through it. I've suffered. I stayed in the valley of despair for many, many, many years in my business, until I finally updated my firmware, and that's when things changed. And that's why I'm passionate about helping other contractors so they don't have to go through the same thing that I went through. All you have to do is be open to change. That's it. And reach out and ask for help. Guys, I appreciate you. Thanks for hanging out with me. Hopefully this was valuable. Stay tuned as we start to get the office, set up and making it look nice and all that stuff. And then eventually we'll be back to normal. So I appreciate you. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next podcast. Remember, profit is not a dirty word.